Hello and welcome to the demo video for the master dashboard. This is actually built based on the one that I use. I use a very similar dashboard for overseeing my business, but the one I used, I built it as a kind of it just continues to grow and grow and grow. And at one point, I'm going to have to clear out some of the data or change it. But what I've tried to do with this one is to make it for an annual period so that you can set it for 12-month period. You can do it for a year. And then when it's finished, you can transfer the data to the new one and it'll carry over all the totals and things that it needs, and you can start afresh. Because otherwise, for example, on the clients, on the job list tab, for example, you've got 2,500 lines, rows. At some point, if you just kept adding on, that's actually just going to not be going to run out of space. So this way you can transfer over at the end of the year. So jump to the end of this video if you want to see how you do the transfer at the end of the year. I'll keep it separate right at the end because you might want to come back to this after you've been using the spreadsheet for a year. So yeah, let me explain how all these tabs work. And we can get started one at a time. So as an overview, the green tabs are all automated. So the intro and setup tab, the black tab, that's one we're going to start on. Those are the settings. Your dashboard, filtered jobs, etc. All the green tabs are all fully automated. There might be a few selections you can make on each one, but there's no data entry per se. The red ones are where you enter the data, and then these gray ones are ones to transfer the information at the end of the year. So let's start with the intro and setup. There are a few settings here, and then there's some drop-down lists. The drop-down lists are all fairly straightforward. You can pick a source for your lead. So where did that job come from? How did it get in? How did you get that job? Was it through email, LinkedIn, networking, cold calling, etc.? So you can list what you wish to list here. Don't add the words existing or unassigned. I've added them on there. Those ones are automated based on some settings. Your types, the type of projects, so you can categorize the different projects you do, so you can see which ones are more popular. Payment methods, how people decide to pay you, you can keep track of that. And then lead values. These are just some kind of average values for leads, because sometimes what will happen, I know for me, is if you get a new lead and you know it's roughly £200 or £300 or £500, you don't know whether it's going to be £625 and 55p or whatever it might be. So you're not putting in accurate numbers, you're kind of putting in rounded numbers. So if you know the range of leads that could come in and the range of values they could be, just fill in a number of them here, just because these are just for easy selection. When you get to the leads, you can override it. So if you do, for example, know that a lead's going to be £520, you can type in £520, that's fine. But these are just kind of defaults, just so that you can easily select them. They're not that important, but they might just be useful just for quick selection when you're putting in leads that are coming in. And those are all the drop-down lists. These are the other various settings. Let me just run through this very quickly with you. Last invoice number, last job number. On the spreadsheet data, and you'll see that the spreadsheet tells you what the next invoice number to use is, and it tells you what the next job number is. So if you want to start, for example, on job number 500, then put the last job in here, 499. When you transfer from one spreadsheet to another at the end of the year, if your last job number was job number 86, the next one on the next spreadsheet will be 87. You don't have to put this in. This is just if you want to. So for example, if you buy the spreadsheet and you're already on job number 640, then put in 640 for the last job number, and then the next one on here will be 641. So this is just a manual override of the next job number, if you will. If you're starting from scratch on job number one, then just leave those both as 0. That's the VAT rate. You can put that in at any stage, and then when you do an invoice, it basically tells you what the VAT rate is. You can select it. So if you're not VAT registered, you can put in 0%. If you are, you can put the current VAT rate. If the VAT rate changes mid-year, you can just change it, because it doesn't do an automatic calculation. It lets you select for each invoice, so you won't have things changing that shouldn't be changing. And the last settings are down here. This is probably one of the most important ones to set up the whole spreadsheet. Select the month, the starting month of your year, and input the year. So if your year runs from January to December, put in January and whatever the year might be, 2022, 2023, etc. If it runs from April or May or whatever, then just simply select here and select which month it starts. And then it will work out a 12-month period. So you need to select the month and then put in the year. So the next year, assuming it starts in the same month again. You just leave, when you do the new template, you select the same month again and then put in the following year, 2023, and it'll start the new year. If you have a situation where you actually, for example, changing your year in and you're working 11 months, then set up one, stop after 11 months and start the new one from the previous month in the following year, if that makes sense. And then the spreadsheet will adapt accordingly to that data. If you have a situation where you actually want to extend a year, 13 months, the spreadsheet won't allow for more than 12. So what I suggest you do is do a 12-month year and then do 1 year of just simply doing 1 month and then start the next one the following month. So you've got basically a 1 month year, as it were, to extend it to 13 so that you can change the dates. The last few settings, these ones are for your target. When we get to the report, you'll see that there's some cells that turn red, yellow, and green, depending on the percentage of the target that you've hit. So you can just decide what's red, yellow, and green here. When we get to the report, it'll make more sense as to what you're looking at. But you can change those percentages for the different color changes on the settings. You can do that at any time. The last two, set a date for sales. So when the spreadsheet follows your sales and actually tracks what's happening and when you've sold and how much you've done per month, etc. So what we're essentially telling it here is, when do you want to track that? Do you want to track it from the payment date, or do you want to track on the invoice date? Because you might invoice something now, which is only paid next month, for example. So which date do you want to use, invoice or payment? And then which value do you want to use? You want to use inclusive or exclusive of VAT. If you're not VAT registered, obviously pick your exclusive. If you are, then you can choose whether you pick inclusive or exclusive, and you can change these at any stage. Originally, when I made the spreadsheet, you had to set this at the beginning and you couldn't change it, whereas now I've adapted it so you can change it at any stage if you want to. And the last setting is an interesting one, but this is to do with your sources. Now, if you say, for example, you get a job from LinkedIn and you get the same client coming back and back and back and back and back, at some point, that client isn't necessarily a lead from LinkedIn, but actually they're an existing client. And I wanted to switch over to existing. So what you can do here is, if you can select up to 2 sources per lead. So you could say, for example, it was LinkedIn and a referral. You can select both. Then it gives 50% of the value to LinkedIn and 50% to referral. However, what I've said here is, after 3 jobs, add existing in as a referral, which means then it's going to give a third to LinkedIn, a third to referral, and a third to existing. And then I said at 5, remove all the sources and make it 100% existing. That's just so that as the client, comes back and back and back, you don't keep assigning it to that original lead, the original source. You can actually assign it to existing rather, so you can tell it when it needs to switch over. That's just so that you don't get kind of artificial values, thinking, my gosh, look at all this business I'm getting from LinkedIn, whereas actually you may have just got one job that's reoccurring. So those are the settings. Once you've set that up, you are ready to go. I'm going to jump straight across to the 4 red tabs, because those are the ones where you're entering information. So the leads, company name, you can either select a company name that's one of your existing clients, or you can actually just type in a new company name, and you can put the job information. So you can say, for example, small job about whatever, or job for this or whatever. This is just for you to identify what it was that they wanted. And then if you select a job that is already on the job list, then those cells gray out, because you don't need to put in the contact number, email address, and where the job came from, because it already knows on your job list. If you add in a new company that you haven't used before, then it'll tell, then it doesn't gray them out, but it'll tell you which ones are vital. So we need to put in a contact person. You can put in a contact number or email address. You don't have to, but obviously the more information you put in, the better. And then you need to select a category. So the category being A, B, C, or D. A, the higher up it is, I normally use A for the fact that if I've secured a meeting, and then B for a high probability job, C for a lower probability job, D for a very cold lead, and E, which is essentially a dead lead, but I still keep them just so that I can see, which leads have gone cold. But you can, whatever you use them for, obviously A being the highest, E being the lowest. If you do write it off as E, it grays out that row. So it essentially shows it as a kind of a dead lead. Otherwise, whichever one you pick, it changes color. You can then put in the value, and this is from the settings tab. So you can select one of the default values, or you can enter in a custom value. And then you can enter the selected date, the initial date. You can just select it, and that puts in today's date. The reason for that is you can see when the lead first came on. And then every time you follow up, you just simply update the follow-up lead. So if you follow up a week later, you select that date. And then if you follow up a week after that, you can select that. So you can see, hey, when did I last follow up and what was the initial date? And then you can select from your drop-down list, excuse me, the sources as to where that job came from. So those are the leads, fairly straightforward, nothing too exciting. You can change these categories as you go along. If they change, say if one was a strong lead and now it's kind of falling down the list, you can change it to CD and you can sort by that column. If you get a new client, so one of these ones, for example, if this is a new client that's not on the client list and you want to add them on the client list, I've added this little client export. So if this person becomes a client, select that, copy, go to your client list, next row down, right click, paste values. Not normal paste, that'll paste the gray and you can't see it. You want to use paste values. Paste value basically shows you what's going on, puts them in the column. As you can see, there seems to be an error there. It's putting the website and the email address, but I will fix that. So yeah, you can essentially come and paste using paste values and paste this information into the client list so that you've got that client. Once you've done that, you can come back here, and that one that you pasted across, because they're now a client and they're on the client list, what you can also do is you can also go to the job list and add them on as a job, select the job number, etc., put them, add them on as a job, and then go back to the lead, and then you can just simply clear them, because now that you've got that information in your client list, you've added them on as a job, you can right click, clear contents. Once you've cleared it, you can just resort by this column again, and it'll sort all of this data. So you don't have them on the possible leads as well as having them on as a client, because you'll get the values for these leads and things. So you don't want to duplicate. So those are the leads. Client list, straightforward. You can either paste values, paste the data from the leads, or you can just simply enter it, new company name, contact person, phone number, email address, and select source 1 and select source 2. If you don't select anything for that, it'll use as unassigned. And if the person keeps coming back, it'll eventually switch to existing based on your settings. The only thing I think I need to mention here is not to have any duplicate names. If you do that, let me just copy that and paste values down at the bottom. It'll turn red to tell you that you shouldn't have those because they are duplicate company names. These will calculate some of the jobs and the won and the lost and possible and rank the jobs, etc. These will all automatically calculate. All the green headers are all automated. The red headers are what you fill in. And that export tab, along with this leads export there, we'll get to at the end of the video. Then you can create job lists. Now you can create jobs. So all you need is you come and select the next job number. Remember, this is what we did in the settings, so it knows what the next job number is because it's checked here what the highest one is. It gives it a new job number. You can select the date when the job starts. You can select the client because you need to add the client onto the client list first. If there's an alternate company name, so this is an interesting thing that I found out with my spreadsheet, is that you might get someone who actually has multiple business names or owns a number of businesses or whatever. And because you want, later on the report, you'll see I actually give all the clients a ranking as to where they fall in. You might want to actually assign all those values to the one client so that you can actually go, well, if the guy's company is called ABC Limited or whatever, they might have ABC Limited and ABC Part 2 Limited or whatever the case might be. You can then put down whichever companies that you're actually doing the job for, but then you can actually override it with an alternate company name and select the one that you want to assign all the values to. So then you know who the company is, but you also know where the stuff's being assigned to. If it's just straightforward, that's one company, they don't have various ones. You just want to sign that person and just leave that blank. Project name, you can type in the short project name and you can select what the type is. These are the ones you put in settings so you can categorize it. And then this column being the status, this is probably one of the most important columns in the spreadsheet because a lot comes from this. So you just need to keep these jobs updated. So whether it's an inquiry, whether it's completed, whether it's accepted, likely, unlikely, stale, or rejected, or incomplete. So inquiries will be things that you've got in that you're not necessarily sure what's going to happen with them. You still need to quote, etc. Completed, obviously, those are the ones that are done. Those will be removed at the end of the year. Accepted are current jobs. So they've been accepted. You're currently working on them, but they're not yet finished. Likely jobs. So in other words, leads that are likely to, where that you've quoted are likely to come in. Unlikely, things that you're not quite sure, you've quoted for them, they're on the job list, but you're not quite sure whether or not they're actually going to go ahead. I usually bring jobs across to the job list from the leads at the point of quoting. So they're leads. As soon as I actually do a quote, send off a PDF quote, I bring them across here, and then I change these statuses as we go along. If the person just ghosts you and never gets back to you, so they haven't actually rejected it, but you pretty much assume it's been rejected, I'll mark them as stale. And if the client actually comes, or potential client comes back and says, thanks, but no thanks, then we do it as rejected. The incomplete, I actually added the incomplete for jobs that you are halfway through and for some reason the project goes dead or they don't need any more. I've had one or two of those where you've been halfway through and they've decided to go another route. They've paid you for the stuff that you've done. So the job's not actually finished, but it was done. I just label that as incomplete. I've only got one or two of them out of a number of hundreds, so you might not even have to use those, but it's an option there if you want it. The action, this is the select whose action is. So for example, if there's this accepted job here, if I need to do some work on there, then I'll select me. Whereas this accepted job, maybe I've done something, I've sent it to the client and I'm waiting for the client to come back to me, then I'll select client. So this is who's actually due to do the next action on that project. I might need to work on that one. And this one, for example, I might be waiting for the client and I might be waiting for the client. Now, these are usually only the accepted ones will have actions. Sometimes the likely ones, I might put an action next to me because I need to do a quote or because the client needs to come back with some information. But you can decide what to do with this column, but it's really just an action of who is responsible, who's basically holding up the works. That's really the thing to know, because then this will remind you, you can come back and go, actually, I'm waiting for the client for this. Or you can actually come here and go, yeah, okay, I need to get cracking on these jobs. And we'll see on the dashboard in a minute, it'll show all the jobs that you're busy with. There's a column here which is on hold. This is really just a case of if this job, for example, the client comes back to you and says, listen, we still want to carry on with this, but it's going to be 6 months or whatever the case might be. And you just don't want this job popping up all over the place, reminding you, you can just simply come put it on hold. It puts it in red and it doesn't use this. It doesn't warn you. It doesn't pop up. It excludes all of this from the figures, because some of the figures are looking at what you might be able to invoice and what could be coming in soon and all that kind of thing. So you need these figures to be up to date and accurate. So if this job's been put on hold for 6 months, you don't want these figures popping up, kind of giving you a false sense of hope, as it were. So you can just mark the job as on hold, and then it disregards that line, that row really, until you come and uncheck it. And then you can put in the estimated job value. So these need to be as accurate as possible. Obviously, if you quoted, put the exact value in. But these, if you don't have an exact value, put in an estimate, because then it just keeps track of, because some of these things, for example, ones that you quoted like likely or unlikely, it might just want to say, well, you could potentially have £660 worth of business, but it's unlikely. So you want to keep these as accurate as possible. When it comes down to actual figures, these will use from your invoice tab, because that's going to be far more accurate than these. So these figures, for example, if you put in a quote price of 420, and then actually you end up doing some extra work, so you end up invoicing them 500. This will override the 420 with the 500. So you don't necessarily have to worry about being 100% accurate, but make them as accurate as you can to get the correct figures. Again, all the green columns, it'll calculate how many jobs you've had from each particular client, what's been paid, what invoices are due, i.e. outstanding, what you still have to invoice on the job as an estimate, the contact person's details, the sources, and there's the job export, which we'll get to at the end of the video. This is kind of a work in progress. You use this all the time. It's kind of a live page. You'll be updating these, adding some new ones in, updating the actions as you do, as priorities change throughout, who's responsible. The last sheet would be the invoice tab, and this is what you do every time you want to create an invoice. So each line is an invoice. You can come here, select the next invoice number. It follows the sequence. You can then select the next job. You can select which job number it is. So which of these jobs are you creating an invoice for? Select the job number, and then it knows all the other details. And then you can put in the invoice date, select today's date or override it, and the value of the invoice. And then the VAT rate you can select, that's in your settings tab. And if you want to assign that invoice to another job, you can do that as an override so that it assigns that to a different job. But again, that's only if you've got a client who's got multiple businesses and you want to make sure it all goes to the same one so that it ranks them properly. If you're not worried about ranking clients, you don't even need to use that one or the other one on the other sheet. And then those will show as yellow when they're outstanding. And then as soon as they've been paid, you just come and tick off, yes, it's been paid, and the date, select the date, and select the payment method. So then it knows that that invoice has been paid. The other option is to actually come and cross that, which means this invoice is now dead. You can still put the date in, and you can still just select admin. I would have admin or something as a method of payment. You can select that. Just to say that will then indicate that this invoice wasn't actually paid, it was cancelled. It won't be included. So you can either do that in extreme cases if you need to cancel invoice, otherwise invoice paid, date, and method. And that will then change the status of that invoice to having been paid. Again, calculated columns, these automated VAT and the value inclusive of VAT, and then your exports, invoice export, which we'll get to at the end of the video. So those are the 4 tabs. If you keep those up to date, the rest of the spreadsheet will automatically create all of this information for you. So let me show you what it does. First of all, your annual turnover. Very simply put, this is the year we're dealing with at the moment. It breaks it down into months, month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., and shows you how much you've done each month. As you progress year from year, it'll show each year below until you get to, I think it's 20 years worth of backlog annual current, so 21 years in total. Then it'll start dropping them off the bottom of the list and just it'll form a rolling list. So you can see, first month of the year, throughout the different years where you were, etc., etc. And this is quite a useful sheet. I use this quite often. If you change your financial year, yes, month 3, for example, might not always be March or whatever the case might be. It may differ, but when it actually pulls up on the report, you'll be able to see the same month. It'll show you exactly month by month. So that's automated. Your monthly KPIs, it's a very straightforward sheet. It gives each month that you've done so far, and it'll bring up the history as well. And it'll show how many new inquiries you got, how many, what was the value that you invoiced, and what was the value that you were paid. Now, these are all ex-VAT because I've told it to use ex-VAT in the settings. Yours might be inclusive. But this is just useful. I find it useful at least every month just to be able to go, how many new, what's the value of the new inquiries? Not necessarily one inquiries, but just all the new inquiries. What was the value that I invoiced this month, and what is it that I was paid this month? And I found personally, one of these 3 are good, then it's usually good, because it means you've either got a load of new inquiries coming in, which is good, or we've invoiced a load of stuff, which is good because those payments will follow, or we've actually been paid a load of stuff, which is also good. So I usually look and see one of those 3 are good. It's usually a good indication. Obviously, if all 3 are good, then you're really flying. So that's what that page does, and this will update automatically as you go along. Your report, as you can see, a fairly complex one. I'm not going to go through in great detail, but I'll try and go through each graph. Year to date with comparison totals. So if we've completed 3 months of the year, for example, it'll show you what you've completed. It'll show you what you've got coming in. And as you do more years, it'll actually show the same thing for all the other years. So you'll be able to see, for example, the year before, what was the total for the year? And also, how does the current year to date compare with the last X number of years, year to date? You'll probably be able to fit about 20 on year as per the other sheet. So you'll be able to see how you're comparing at the moment based on where you where you were at the same stage in those other years. This one here gives you a value per month of the year. But as you can see here, I've got your current sales per month, and then it shows you the minimum, the average, and the maximum. So all 3 lines, all 3 of those dotted lines, all at the same point at the moment. So you can only see one. But as you add more years worth of data, it'll give you the minimum, it'll give you the average, and it'll give you the maximum. So when you get to July, for example, you'll be able to see what your current sales are. You're able to see what the minimum was for July. You're able to see what the average is for July, and you'll be able to see what the maximum is for July. So you can gauge where you are. Are you doing the worst July ever? Are you bang on average? Is this going to be the best July ever? You'll be able to tell by those dots, the dotted lines. Here are some year-to-date minimum, year-to-date average, year-to-date maximum. These are from the previous years, year-to-date current sales, etc. So these are just what you're seeing in the graphs, but just in some values. Well, there's some at the top here. There was a few more year-to-date sales, average sales per month, etc. You can have a look and see what those all say. This is a target and amount earned. So the green line shows you what you've earned each month, which should correlate with that one. However, these red lines are showing your target. So this is a dynamic table. So what will happen is I've put in an annual target of 8,000 and it says month per year. You can leave it blank if it's a full year, but if you've got a shortened year, just select how many months, put in your annual target. And then what happens is at the beginning of the year, if you put in, for example, 24 grand over the year for 12 months, it'll show you 2 grand per year and it'll be a consistent graph. If you come in the first month and earn 4 grand, then what happens is it then adjusts the rest of the 11 downwards in order to accommodate your total. So these will adjust. You can see from where you are, they're all going to be level. But as you complete each month, it adjusts all the following months to compensate for what you've actually earned. So you can see how your target changes based on what you're actually earning. Here's a breakdown of the work, where the work is coming from this year, all-time percentages, rank, etc. You can see where all of your work is coming from. There's a breakdown of the 2 pie charts, current year and all-time. And you can choose existing. Do you include or exclude existing? And do you include or exclude unassigned? Because sometimes it's useful to turn off existing, because then you can actually see where your new business is coming from rather than all of the existing clients. If you scroll down, you can see again your source based on the status. So you can see, well, hold on, how come a load of I don't know, website referrals are being rejected or whatever? Maybe your marketing's not correct, maybe you're appealing to the wrong people. This is just to see if there's any kind of correlation between the source and the status. And again, the type and the status as well. If you're losing a whole bunch of the same kind of jobs, maybe you shouldn't be quoting on them, those type of things. It just gives you a little bit of information. Breakdown per status, again, it gives you a breakdown of the status of where all the stuff is that you can go, well, hang on, I've got quite a bit of likely work coming in, etc. And here I've just categorized each of those statuses to one possible lost, and you can see what the percentages are of what you've actually won and what's possible to win. And then down at the bottom here, you've got your top 10 clients, and it ranks them based on what they've purchased. So these are clients of the current year, and those are all time. These are values based on paid invoices only and not one job. So when you win the job, it then looks at the invoicing to get the exact amount that you've actually invoiced. So if you've won a big job from a client, but you haven't invoiced anything yet, they might not appear in this list until you've actually invoiced them and then they will pop on. So that's the report. You can view this as you can save this as a PDF, and it saves nicely onto a PDF page. As you can see, all of that information, very useful. And that's all on the reports tab. The last two, filtered jobs. This is essentially your job list, but it just filters them. So it's all automated. You can decide what you want to see. So if you, example, want to say what's currently on the go, you can select accepted, and it only shows you accepted jobs. If there's too many to fit in the page, this will say page 1 of 2, and you can change that to 2, and then you can see the second page. You might want to see, well, actually, what's accepted and what's likely, and then you can see, okay, these ones are on the go, these ones might be coming in. Or you may actually want to clear that and go, let's have a look at likely and unlikely, and have a look and see what could potentially be coming in. Or you may want to filter it on rejected, whatever the case might be. If you clear all of them, or if you select all of them, it will show you a complete list. You can do that not only with the status, but also with the next action. So if you're going to go here, you can say, what do I actually have to do? And it'll tell you the jobs that you've marked with you being to do the next action. And then on hold, you can either include both. You can have on hold only. So if you select that, it only shows you jobs that are on hold. You can exclude on hold jobs, or you can include both the current or the on hold. And you can select those filters in order to see what's going on. Okay, and then the last tab is possibly the most important one. This is the one that I spend a lot of time looking at. I'll look at almost every single day, and it's got all the key figures on it. It's not particularly, let's say, attractive in the sense of loads of graphs and tables and charts and colorful things like that, but it gives you a lowdown. It gives you the overview as to what's going on. So let me just explain to you how this works. We'll start from the left here. This first section here, this part here is the overall figures. So we can see, for example, that's what we've achieved to date, and that's based on the last full month, so not your current month. That's a target to date. So in other words, at the end of last month, we should have been at 5333, double three, but we weren't. We're at 3960, which means that we have achieved 74.3% of the target. However, if we add in the current month sales to where we are at the moment, so then that means that we've actually achieved 81.1% of the target. And if we actually have a look at all invoices paid, we receive 138.1% of the target, which means that we're able to see, well, hold on a second, what's where were we? But if what's been paid comes in, where will we be? And if what's been invoiced all comes in, where will we be? So you can see roughly what's going on, where you ought to be, where you are, etc. with those three. And those three will change color according to what you did on your settings tab. How many jobs on hold, how many active jobs, you can see that. And then this column here, all of these values are fairly similar. What this means is based on the total paid, we are £3,135 short of the target. Now, that was a target that we set on the report. That was this target here of £8,000. So that's what we need. If we actually get all the outstanding invoices paid in, then it says we hit the target. That's why these are blank, because we don't need those values, because each of these values relate to these values here. So this is based on paid. This one here is based on outstanding invoices. This one here is based on possible to invoice and above, etc., etc. So what this one does is so for example, that one is based on that figure plus that figure. That one is based on that figure plus that figure plus that figure, etc. So it shows you when you're actually due to hit your target. So you could see, for example, let's just raise that target, and then you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. If we say, for example, 15,000, and we go back to the dashboard, now all of a sudden you see here, it says that's what you've got left on your target. If we have all the outstanding invoices, that will be left on your target. If everyone that you can invoice, it's possible to invoice, i.e. all your current jobs are all invoiced up to date, then that's what you'll hit. And if you get all your likely jobs in, then you'll actually hit your target, which means now you know for the rest of the year, all you've got to do is get in your paid, what's paid this month, get in all your outstanding invoices, invoice all the jobs you've currently got, and you need to get in all the jobs that are likely. And then you know, okay, that will help me to hit my target. So you can see where your target actually, where you'll be able to hit your target. Now, I would imagine at the beginning of the year, these will all be full and quite large, but as you go throughout the year, these numbers will decrease until you get towards the end of the year where you'll hopefully hit the target. This white section over here is the key figures for this month. So you can see what is the target this month based on your target that you put in, what's been paid so far, what have you got of outstanding invoices, what was last year's total for this month. Now, I don't have the data in, that's why it's blank, but that would show up there. What's the maximum on record, previous on record, the average, previous on record. You'll be able to see, okay, what's the maximum month, what's the average month, so you can see what it is that you're shooting for. Here, outstanding invoice, possible to invoice. So these figures here, outstanding invoice, possible to invoice, likely jobs, unlikely jobs, they're not necessarily monthly figures. These are everything that's outstanding. So you can see in total what, in theory, you could, but in theory, what you could invoice, but you'll know what's likely to invoice. I mean, a lot of these likely jobs, you might not be able to get to this month anyway. They might come in next month. So these are all totals, but it's just showing you in this key figure for this month that, you know, what's available to be able to do, kind of thing. Number of jobs added last month, number of jobs added this month. That's usually quite key to see, okay, you know, are jobs actually coming in? And then what's excuse me, the value of jobs on hold, how many client actions. This next one's just some KPIs. How many client actions are due? How many of your actions are required? That's what you've selected on the job list in this column here where you selected actions. That was that. How many Class A leads, how many Class B leads, how many Class C leads, how many Class D leads, the value of each of them, not the number, obviously the value. So you can see what kind of leads you got in the pipeline. And then these are a list of the jobs that you've said need your action. Now, because there are only 10 spaces here, this might change to one of 2 or one of 3, in which case, if you do have more than 10 and you want to see the second page, you can just come here and press 2 and it'll show you the second page. Now, I don't have anyone on that page, so that's blank, but you can toggle through the pages. The reason I've done it like that is just so you don't have to have a whole long space and you're only using 2 or 3, at least here. I mean, if you see the top 10, that's given you plenty enough to go on. You can have a look at page 2. The last section's white section over here. I'll get to the top in a minute. This white section, this one shows you the target. Last year's values, target, and this year. And what it does is in dark green, it shows you, there you can see 3960. That's what we've achieved to date, at the end of last month. This one here is a 905. So that's what we've actually invoiced this. That's what's, sorry, we paid this month already. So that's where we will be at the end of this month if nothing else is paid. This value here is the outstanding invoices. So what this is saying is that's where we were last month. This is where we will be this month, the end of this month, if nothing else is paid. But that's where we could be at the end of this month if everything's paid. And this shows all previous months, this current month target, and all the future months. So that's what that shows. And last year will be the same as the target. So the only value that's slightly different is this one. This one you could still earn this month, whereas these ones will always be the future months. And this will just give you an idea of where you are compared to your target and compared to where you were last year. The section at the top, that's obviously just the dates that you put in and your business name and all the rest of it. The current month will change. That'll tell you what the current month is. Number of cancelled invoices, and then the value of those cancelled invoices. Remember, on your invoice list, that's if you check that cross and fill in the date and transfer and admin and stuff. If you put in the cross, that's what that does. It'll pop up as number of cancelled and value. How many months in the year? 12. It'll always be 12 by default, unless, of course, you've gone to your report and you've put in that this year is only 11 months, whatever. If you're changing the year. And last but not least are these cells underneath there. Now, there's nothing showing here at the moment, but there would be if there were any errors. Now, on all the spreadsheets, what I've done is on all the spreadsheets, all the tabs, all these red ones, that's why they've got the same headers over here. Each of these has got tabs. You drop down list, or where you enter data. Now, let's just put in here, for example, company 1. So I've got 2 company ones on the client list. Now, as I do that, this tells me that I need this information, but it's also telling me that I can't use the name company one because I've already used them over here. And we don't want any duplicates because that's going to cause grief. So the red cells will highlight if there's an error and you need to change them. And this goes for all 4 of these tabs. And the yellow ones mean that you need to actually enter that information. It needs that information. So this one needs a contact name at least. You don't necessarily have to put a number and email address and where you got the job from, but you need to at least put in a contact name. So that would these different colors, yellow and red at the top here, that will show at the top to show you in case you scroll down and you can't see it, you can still see here that there's some errors. So those will show that errors. And then if you go to your dashboard, you can see now it says 2 alerts and 1 alert. So 2 red alerts, 1 yellow alert. So that shows you that there are issues on that page that you can then go to the page. You can rectify those issues, whatever they might be. If you go back to the dashboard, then those alerts disappear. So those are just to tell you that there are problems on the page. So this dashboard page is, very useful, to be honest. This is almost, well, it's not exactly the same, but it's very, very close to one that I use. And I use this almost every day to see where I am. Come on here, have a look, see what's happening. And I hope that this is helpful to you. So just as a way of a quick recap, if we go to the 4 red tabs, they're the 4 red tabs. These are the ones that you enter the information. Now, I did say that at the end of the video, I would get to the data export. Let me show you how to do that. Each of these 4 tabs has a gray section where we can export. Now, when you start a new spreadsheet at the beginning of every year, you obviously want to set this page up. So what I would suggest you do is actually set this up with the sources, types, methods, etc. Set this page up first with everything else blank, and then save that spreadsheet as your default spreadsheet that you use every year. Save that as a backup and a default. If you actually mess the spreadsheet up by pasting instead of paste values or moving something around and you get errors and that kind of thing, if you come to the front page here and you scroll down how to keep a spreadsheet working, there's a website that it'll go to a link where it'll actually show you how to fix it. And essentially what it is putting up an old version that isn't corrupt and pasting the data across. So keep a version. And if you've got this filled in, then what happens is the next year when you start it, you don't have to refill these in, because these will have to be exactly the same. Because for argument's sake, if you take out website the next year, you can do that. But then everywhere where you've selected website, it's going to flag up red and you're going to have to just go and clear it. So it is a bit of a faff. Ideally you want to be able to keep these the same year on year and possibly just add a few more if you need to. But yeah, I would fill these in and save a version. You've got that. And then in the new year, all you need to do then is just simply start a new one, change the year, because everything else will be the same as you did it. Change the year to the following year, and then go through the 4 red tabs, and each of them will have this gray section. So if you can copy the whole thing down at the bottom, but if you only need to go as far as you got data. And if you right click and copy that, and then open up on the new spreadsheet, come to the same tab, leads, and come to this cell here and right click and paste values. Then what happens is you paste that data in here. Now the leads will paste everything across because this data behind here is the same as what's here. You're going to paste everything across in the leads because you can clear the gray ones out if you want to. It'll paste all the leads across. Your clients, it will paste all of the clients across as well. So, but do the same thing. Copy it from the gray section into here. You could, in theory, copy the red section into the red section, but just get into habit of using the gray section because the other 2 are different. So your job list, for example, won't copy all the completed jobs. It won't copy the rejected jobs, and it won't copy the incomplete jobs, I think it was. So it'll only copy the ones that are either current or could potentially come in. So in this one, if we scroll across to the right-hand side and we copy that gray and then paste values, we'll probably only have jobs up to about here somewhere because you're only going to have the ones that are currently active. But then you copy the jobs and you paste it into the new, you copy from the old one, paste it into the new one using paste values, same tab, Same with the invoice as well. The invoice won't carry over the completed invoices. It'll only carry over the current invoices. So you can copy that as well, paste values into the next spreadsheet. And there you go. You've got your data pasted across, and it's pasted the correct data. It hasn't carried over what it doesn't need to carry over. There's one last thing you need to do, and that's to come to the annual export and actually copy everything that's below those green headers. So all the way up to there, and if I press Shift Control and down, I jump all the way down to the bottom to row 2510. Not this last row, just to where the border ends. Right click, copy that, and then if I go to the new sheet and the import tab, right click, paste values, and it should paste in. If it doesn't paste, it means you've copied too much stuff. So make sure you just copy what you need to underneath the headers, then paste values. And you can see here jobs 1, it all lines up. If it doesn't line up, there's a problem. You need to do it again. But you can see I've deliberately kept these columns wider so you can see what's in here. Don't go and edit any of the stuff unless you know what you're doing. If you understand what you're doing, then if you want to do it, you can edit it. But I'd rather just leave this if I were you. If you paste it in, it all looks like it's in the correct place. Once you've pasted this data in using paste values and you've done those 4 tabs like I've shown you, then your new spreadsheet for the new year is now up and running. And now if you go to the dashboard, you'll see some of those numbers are going to be different. Not necessarily the dashboard, but in your report, you'll now see some different stuff. It was that other graph with the minimum and maximum. That's not showing yet because I think we just need to change that to the new year. Let's try that. There you go. Now I see it, it's changed and it's showing you a minimum maximum, and you haven't got any new figures yet because you haven't started the new year. So these graphs will update based on the information that you've got. So my point being, let's just go back to the intro and change that back again because we don't need that. That's how you update it. You copy the export into the import, export of the old into the import of the new, and then you do each of those other 4 tabs. I would suggest doing the other 4 tabs first, and then that export. But the only thing that you do need to remember, and you need to make sure you don't do, is on the old spreadsheet, once you've copied the data across, don't then go and update stuff. So for argument's sake, if this job is actually complete, and then you copy the data across and then come back to the old job and mark it complete. Don't do that. Once you've updated everything's up to date, then transfer the data and then start on the new spreadsheet and make changes to the new spreadsheet. Don't make changes to the old spreadsheet once you've transferred the data. It probably wouldn't make that much of a difference, but you might just have minor issues with one spreadsheet telling you earn money and the other spreadsheet telling you earn the same money, and you don't necessarily want that. So you want to make it as up to date as possible before doing the transfer. But if you do that transfer once a year, at the beginning of the financial year, then you can use that spreadsheet throughout the year again, and then you can carry on adding leads, carry on adding clients, new jobs, invoices, etc. So yeah, I hope that all makes sense to you. Normally with the other prime range spreadsheets, I kind of give a demo video, and then I say to people, if you want extra help with this, you need to book a slot, buy a slot, and actually charge you for it. This one's slightly different. If you've purchased the spreadsheet, I realize that it's quite a complicated one, and I realize that I can't necessarily explain everything during the demo video. So if you have purchased this, if you're wanting to purchase and you're not sure whether you can do something, do drop me an email. Just say, listen, can I do this before I buy the spreadsheet? If you have bought it and there's something you don't understand or something that's gone wrong, please do get in touch. Because this one I know is a complicated one, and I would like to help you if you've got stuck. Because I know I obviously can't cover everything here. So yeah, if that sounds like something you need, please just do drop me an email. Just say, listen, I'm struggling with this, so let's set something up, have a chat, and I can help you. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the best with your business. Bye-bye.